Hello and welcome to A Dose of Wellbeing, the Pharmacy Support Podcast. Today I'm your host, I'm Danielle Hunt, I'm a Chief Executive at Pharmacist Support and we're the independent charity for the profession. We're delighted to bring you inspiring stories, tips and expert insights that can help enhance your wellbeing and make a positive impact on your professional lives. This podcast is all about supporting you, our pharmacy family, as you navigate the challenges of the profession. So today I'm delighted to be joined by our Wellbeing Development Senior Manager, Melissa Cochrane, to talk all about stress. Stress is something we all experience. It's a particularly challenging environment in the world of pharmacy today, and we see firsthand at the charity the impact stress, particularly prolonged stress or stress that has not been addressed, can have on individuals. As we all know, it's better to be proactive and work on prioritising our well-being. But at times of stress, we know that this is not always easy. Through the podcast today, we hope to provide you some food for thought and some tips on identifying and dealing with stress. So Melissa, you spend a lot of time creating great resources and information around well-being. So I'm really keen to pick your brains today to talk all about stress. I know myself that stress can just creep up on you. So can you tell us what the early signs may be if you are experiencing stress?
Absolutely. I think that some of the first signs tend to show up in sleep. If you start noticing you're not sleeping so well, you're waking up in the night, you can't get to sleep, you're waking up too early. These are often some of the first signs of stress. Appetite changes can also be a sign. And that can really vary from person to person. Some people eat more when they're stressed. Some people can't stomach eating food because maybe it makes them feel nauseous or something like that when they're stressed. So I think changes to sleep and appetite are probably some of the very first signs to be aware of. And then there are the changes to your regular patterns. So is it harder for you to be on time for things? Is your ability to complete your work impacted? So sometimes one of the earlier signs of stress might be just a dip in productivity and inability to focus very well, and sort of distractibility, not being able to do things as efficiently as normal. So you're kind of looking for changes to basic processes such as sleep and appetite, and then maybe some cues around ability to focus and be productive.
So I suppose it's really important to kind of keep an eye on some of those early signs.
Yeah.
So if someone did notice those early signs, is there anything that you'd recommend that someone should do pretty immediately?
Yeah, and it's something that I just did this week, as a matter of fact. So I think the signs of stress can start creeping in. Another big one, irritability. If you notice you're starting to get snappy, if things are bothering you that normally wouldn't, that's a really good early indicator as well. So when that starts to happen, I think a lot of time when we're stressed, we just sort of plow through and we might not even be aware of what's stressing us out. So the first thing I would say is to take a little time out. So notice those signs in yourself. Take a little bit of time and just think, like, what is going on for me? What just happened that's causing me more stress? And like I say, I had to do this week. I noticed some of these signs in myself and I thought, all right, what is going on here? It happened over a couple of days, and then I took some time out and I was able to take stock of the situation, figure out what was impacting me, and then talk about it. And kind of, even if you can't fix it, you can talk to someone, you can get some help, some support, and start looking for solutions. But if you're not even aware of what it is that's causing the problem, it's really hard to move forward. So I think the first step is just to take a moment and try to figure out what's going on.
And I suppose that's probably one of the harder things to do, because when you're feeling highly stressed, taking some time out can feel maybe a bit of a luxury, and it's like, I haven't got time for that, I'm so stressed. So I'm guessing that's kind of a common mistake. So what other common mistakes do you feel people make when they're trying to tackle stress?
Probably the main one is using alcohol to decompress. This can quickly lead to a cycle that can make stress worse. And this isn't about people drinking too much to the point that they, are drunk. I'm not talking about that, but just using alcohol to unwind can lead you down a slippery slope, because alcohol tends to impact sleep, even small amounts. So once you get home and you're thinking, I just need that glass of wine to decompress, you probably are starting to look at having some knock-on effects in your sleep at that point, which can lead to more stress the next day. Likewise, some people might turn to caffeine because they feel like they need to do more in order to tackle their stress. Their stress will get better if they can just finish this, and this. So they're using caffeine. And it's really well established. The half-life of caffeine is much longer than we think. I believe, I'd have to check the figures on this, but I believe it's like 6 hours.
Wow.
So it's in your system a really long time, much longer than most people realize. So if you're having that caffeine and it's not first thing in the morning, you might have effects on your sleep that you wouldn't necessarily connect up, because you might not realize how long the caffeine remains in your system. So that's another one. And both caffeine and alcohol can also impact your mood. So some people will experience very subtle but more anxiety the day after they've had alcohol. Likewise with caffeine, you can just get that sort of anxious, jittery feeling. And so that, problems with your mood can impact your relationships, and there's kind of there can be like a spreading out of the problem if you're doing that to help. Another thing that I think a lot of people do when they're starting to feel stressed is they want to feel in control. And so they're looking for things that they can control, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but they'll often start trying to control things that they can't control.
Yeah.
And this can irritate everyone around them. This can cause problems in the workplace and home relationships, and more stress on yourself if you're trying to control things that are really out of your control. Yeah. You're just causing yourself then even more stress. So it's about really realizing what is within your control at that point and what you need to let go of and allow other people to take on, or just allow to take its course, because it's really outside of what you can impact.
Yeah. I mean, alcohol one I find really interesting, because it's interesting you say it's not necessarily a lot of alcohol. It might be one glass of wine to kind of unwind. And I think we see a lot of that on the telly, people get in, pour a glass of wine. It's seen as relaxing. Yeah. And I did the dry January, and I've continued that because I could absolutely see the benefit on sleep, and also like just low level anxiety sometimes. Yeah. And it was actually a colleague of mine that told me about the Drink Well app. It's an NHS app, and it just allows you to track your drink-free days. Oh. And that's been really helpful. And it just stops you it's only one glass of wine, but that one glass of wine I didn't realise could be so kind of disruptive on your sleep. So it's really interesting you say that.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, because we all know about hangovers, but there's also there can be an anxiety hangover as well. Yeah. And if you're already stressed and then you're putting that on top, it can be really, really tricky.
It's probably the worst thing you can do, isn't it? And put more anxiety on top. But yeah. So thinking more positively then, what are some effective stress reduction tools that you think we could use?
Well, it's really, really individual. So for me, the things that I've seen working from a lot of people are walking, getting exercise, getting outdoors. And I work from home a lot of days. There can be days when I don't even need to leave the house. But one thing that I've noticed in my own life is if I do, I immediately feel better. Yeah. And get out and get that fresh air. So I think that's really important. And if you think about the context of a pharmacy, you can be enclosed in that space all day. And some pharmacies might not even have windows. Yeah. So it's about when you've got that break, when you've got that lunch, get out, get some exercise, get some fresh air. I think that works for most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other things that can work are breathing techniques, Some people like to do yoga or stretching or Tai Chi, those kind of movement things. For others, it might be painting or listening to music or making music. I was listening to a podcast and someone was measuring their heart rate variability, and their doctor noticed that every week at like Saturday at 2 p.m, their heart rate variability was really good. And he was like, "What are you doing at that time?" And the person said, well, got a bit embarrassed and said, "I'm washing my car." So it can be really individual, what makes you feel relaxed. But I think if you tune into what's happening for you physiologically, you can usually figure it out.
Yeah, and is there any that you've personally found very effective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an allotment. I find that is one of the very best things. And I love having a big job at the allotment. So like hauling wheelbarrows full of wood chip, like really getting out there and working. I enjoy that a lot. Doing yoga, I do yoga almost without fail every night before bed. I do some breathing exercises and keeping active. But I do have to say that often when I get stressed and I feel like I have so many things to do, these things start to slip. And it's when I need them most. I often find that I'm not doing them as much as I should. When I'm doing well, I'm sort of on top of them. So I find personally that I need to be really mindful that if I'm starting to feel stressed, I need to make absolutely sure I do these things, because that is when I'll often let them start to go, which is the opposite of what I need.
And I suppose habits probably quite important there. If you have regular routine or you're in a good habit, then it's a little bit easy. You're not trying to fit it in. So
for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You mentioned breathing, which I do find really interesting. It seems like a bit of a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah.
And lots of people talk about it. And sometimes I think, well, breathing, what kind of impact does that have? Why is it so important?
Well, so there are certain types of breathing that are better for us than others. So I would say like, a really shallow breath is probably not going to do that much to help us. But if you can learn to control your breathing and to breathe in certain patterns, what you can do is switch your parasympathetic nervous system response on. And what that is your body's, some people call it the rest and digest response. So it's when your body's really feeling calm, feeling peaceful, and you can do that by changing the way that you breathe. So it's almost like you're sending a message to the body that everything's okay.
Right, wow.
So for example, if you think about, you go to the beach, you'll often take a breath in and then you take like a really long exhale. It's like, oh, I'm here, I'm relaxed. Yeah. That's a relaxation breath. That's like your body's relaxation response. But so that happens naturally in that kind of environment, but you can also do that when you're stressed. You can breathe in the same way. So take a breath in and then do a really long exhale. Do that for a couple of times, and you're almost tricking your body into creating that kind of a response. So you do it naturally based on some situations, but you can also hack it, if you know what I mean. So these are things that we can learn to do. We've done some exercises at the charity that can be really helpful. A lot of people like box breathing, for example, and we've got examples of that online, and that can be really helpful in doing the same thing.
Yeah, because I've heard a lot about the box breathing. I think I read that US Navy SEALs use it as a breathing technique in highly stressful situations, so I can imagine that's quite effective. So how often should you be thinking about doing these breathing exercises, and what type of breathing exercises could you look at if you were interested in this?
Yeah, I think it's really best to embed a practice when you're feeling well, because so you're creating like neural pathways in your brain that make it an easy thing for you to do. You understand it, you're comfortable with it. So if you start practicing once or twice a day, doing some box breathing, for example, or doing an exhale longer than an inhale, and training yourself on that, it becomes really comfortable. So I would say probably once or twice a day. And then when you find yourself in a really stress or tense situation, you've got that to call on. You've already embedded the practice. Your body knows how to do it, knows the kind of response it's probably going to trigger. And you'll probably have a much easier time of it than if you're getting stressed and trying to learn it at that time.
Yeah.
So that would be my top tip. And then there are more advanced breathing exercises. If you do yoga, for example, there's alternate nostril breathing and lots of other breath work that a good yoga instructor would teach you. I think they've been doing that for thousands of years.
Right. Wow.
But probably the easiest one, and the one that we've had a lot of positive feedback with in the charity, is the box breathing.
Yeah. That sounds great. And you mentioned that those breathing exercises can be found through resources.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what type of resources that is and what other resources a charity has on kind of reducing stress and stress management?
Yeah. Probably the easiest thing would be for pharmacists to create an account on our Wellbeing Learning Platform. That's free. So pharmacist students and trainees are all eligible to create an account. And then you'll see we have workshops. We have a stress management and building resilience workshop. We've got a workshop called The Science Behind Wellbeing, which talks in more depth about breathing and exercise and all of these different things that can help with stress and wellness. But we also have lots of videos. So there's like a 5-minute video of me teaching a couple of breath exercises.
Oh, great.
If you didn't want to create a Wellbeing Learning Platform account, it's on our YouTube channel. So I think finding the videos and checking out our workshops would be a great place to start.
Brilliant. Great.
Yeah.
And I think I know as a leader, obviously you're trying to manage your own stress, but you're also very mindful of the stress levels of your team and helping them manage. So, you know, we know pharmacy is a challenging environment at the moment. We've got lots of research that tells us that. So I'm very conscious, if you were a pharmacy manager or leader, what could you do to reduce your stress, but also look at improving team well-being and helping the team through stressful situations?
Yeah. I think this is a great question because you'll know as a leader, I think you create the environment in your team. And so if you can be open about talking about stress and mental health, you give other people permission to do that. So I think starting conversations is probably one of the key things a pharmacy manager or leader could do. Personal examples can help as well, because it gives, again, it's giving that permission. It's saying, you know, I'm the leader, but I've struggled with stress too. And this is maybe how I've managed it, or let's talk about it as a team. Or in one-to-ones. Yeah. These can be really important conversations. We have also a course that can really help pharmacy managers and leaders called Embracing a Workplace Wellbeing Culture. And in that we talk about mental health. We talk about mental health in the workplace, understanding signs you might see in your team if someone's struggling, and how to help at that point, how to manage conversations, as well as things that leaders and organizations can do to help minimize stress. Because we know that pharmacy is a stressful profession, and there's a lot of things that are happening that are outside of the pharmacist's control and outside of the pharmacy probably manager and leader's control as well. So if you're looking at the things that you can do within the team to help, that can make a really big difference.
Yeah, because like you say, it is really challenging, and I suppose we've covered some of the sort of tools we offer today, but I suppose if our listeners wanted just the key takeaways from you today around the topic of stress, what would you say?
So key takeaways would be take a moment and really try to understand what's happening for you. If you're starting to notice that stress, just take some time to look at your life and figure out what's impacting you. It is a universal factor, but it doesn't have to run your life. So stress is always going to be there most likely, but you have more control than you might think about how it can impact you. And I would say just start doing something, because it's easy to get caught up in researching, which approach is going to be the best, and is there a particular breathing technique I should be trying, and which exercise is going to be the best. And I would say don't worry too much about any of that. Just start doing something.
Yeah.
If you know you need to be more active, find something fun, maybe something you've enjoyed in the past, and just do it. If you're not getting outside enough, just get out and take a 5-minute walk. I would say action is the key thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of us can get caught in a cycle of thinking about something or planning doing something, and they're not actually doing it. And that is really where I would start. And then reaching out if you need support. Reach out at work. Pharmacist support, we're here. Reach out to us. Reach out to someone you trust.
Yeah.
You'd be hard pressed to find someone who hasn't suffered the effects of stress. So I think getting that support would probably be easier than you imagine. Having people who understand how you're feeling. That's probably where
but I mean, that's really interesting, because I suppose when you're feeling stress, and there's all these great techniques, but sometimes it can feel quite overwhelming, like where do I start? So I love that, just one small thing. And I suppose we've got no excuse at the moment. The sun's shining today, we're moving into spring, just getting outside, because what really resonated earlier was when you said, like in pharmacy, sometimes there's no windows. I really suffer if we're in meetings for a long time in our office and there's not much natural light, and I have this just need to get outside for 5 minutes. So I suppose I really like that one takeaway, even if you're just getting outside for a quick walk on your lunch break or making that small change, I suppose that can make a huge difference. So
absolutely.
That's absolutely brilliant. And I know you've got great resources that you've created, so I would urge people to look at our website, because there's loads of great tips, and I'm really interested in those breathing videos. I'm definitely going to go and have a look at them and maybe have a practice. So thanks so much to you, Melissa, for all your impact. I think it really makes a difference, and I really do think just that one small thing is the key takeaway. So, like me, if you found what we've spoken today about interesting, you can find lots of information on our website. We've got videos, online content, loads of great things. So just urge you to go and have a look. As Melissa mentioned, if you're a pharmacist, pharmacy student, a trainee, you might be interested in our stress management and building resilience workshop. I can totally vouch that is a great workshop. And all our workshops I've done a number of times, and every single time I take a little extra snippet. And the science behind wellbeing workshop is also really interesting. That's on our Wellbeing Learning Platform as well. And that really helps us understand what's going on. And what I really like, Melissa, when we talk about anything is just getting that understanding of why sometimes, like us understanding our bodies and our reactions can actually really help us when we're thinking about the solution. So when you explain then about the breathing, that makes a lot of sense. If you're telling your body to be calm, you're naturally going to relax. And you almost feel that when you talked about relax, I kind of went, oh, yeah, you can feel it. So that's really great. As Melissa said, we're also here to support. So please click on the How We Can Help in the podcast description if you feel you do need support from the charity. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We've got team members who are available to support you. And we also want to continue providing our free and confidential support services and open up conversations like this, which are so important. If you've enjoyed our podcast episode today, please consider making a donation so we can continue to create more content and support the well-being of our pharmacy family. You'll find a link in the podcast description or a QR code at the end of the video if you're watching this episode, which you can click on and make a donation. Any donation helps us to provide our essential services such as counselling, peer support and financial assistance. So all that's left for me to say is thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next podcast.